So here I will present a controlled semi-naturalistic method to investigate anomalous information reception in mediumship. This is a work developed by a group of researchers, as is shown here. And this research was performed at Federal University of Juiz de Fora, at NUPES, the Research Center in Spirituality and Health at the School of Medicine. Well, as this conference itself is a sign, there has been a resurgence of research on mediumship, especially an interest in the investigation about the possibility of anomalous reception information through mediumistic experience. However, the best controlled recent studies published around the last 2 decades have found some conflicting results. Although the meta-analysis from Patricio showed an overall positive results, however, there has been some controlled studies have found positive results regarding anomalous information reception beyond chance, and other studies have found negative results. And in the study of mediumship, since the beginning, since the SPR, the mid-19th century, there has been always a discussion, a challenge about how can we balance the needed control in scientific studies, especially control against fraud and information leakage to the medium, from the seeker to the medium, and at the same time, how can we keep ecological validity? By ecological validity, we mean a research protocol that reflects the most possible the natural environment in which the mediums usually work. Because if we create an environment too artificial, it could impair the capacity of actual mediums to perform. So this has been a very long discussion, and we are trying to help in this kind of discussion. One example of a very famous medium from the last century was Chico Xavier from Brazil. He was famous especially because of psychography, a kind of automatic writing. He published more than 450 books through psychography, covering different topics, since historical novels, philosophy, history, physics, biology, ethics, religion, etc. He sold more than 50 million copies in 10 languages. However, he donated all copyrights to charities. All his mediumistic work was free of charge. And at the same time, in addition to producing books, and this poetry will be analyzed in the next presentation by Herbert, he also produced around 2,000 psychographic letters. These letters are letters allegedly written by deceased people, and these letters were addressed to their beloved ones who were left behind here living on Earth. So this is an actual picture of Chico Xavier doing a psychography. Here is another example of a seance, a public seance, where he received people from all over the country and then wrote these letters. Okay, and we have published some papers investigating this kind of mediumistic phenomenon, psychographic letters. We published 2 studies, and both studies found positive results. By positive results, I mean these letters contained detailed, precise, and specific information that were not clearly informed to Chico Xavier. So the point is, it suggested that Chico Xavier in some way had some kind of anomalous information reception. However, of course, the problem of these studies is that they are retrospective. So we cannot actually control about information leakage at that time. Okay, and another example of a study with Chico Xavier performed by our research group, and it connects with a presentation by Elane about the scientific information that could be provided by mediums. For example, this is a paper discussing information about the pineal gland that Chico Xavier wrote through psychography in the 1940s, 1950s. And these informations were compared what we currently know about the pineal gland. And it's interesting because most of this information were not known at that time, but are considered precise now. So these are some examples of this sort of investigation. So the problem is this triple-blind protocol where the medium has no contact with the sitter is not the usual way how the Brazilian mediums proceed. Okay, so it seems that because of that, most experienced mediums who works with writing psychographic letters to deceased refused to attend this research. But we had the participation of other experienced mediums, but not so experienced in producing psychographic letters to allegedly by the deceased. And then we got negative results, so we had no statistically significant results. And because of that, because of the previous study with Chico Xavier that had no control at all, and this very strict control, this more recent study, we try to find a kind of a midway, a balance between no control at all or a too strict or even artificial control for the Brazilian environment of mediumistic experience. And we think that psychography could be a very promising experience to investigate because it does not allow immediate feedback like code reading. So because the medium writes the letter and cannot have immediate feedback during writing the letter. So he needs to write the letter and just after he can communicate the letter's content. So this could be important aspect, and we took advantage of this exactly in this study. So we developed a semi-naturalistic protocol combining ecological validity and control to evaluate anomalous information reception in psychographic letters. So we present here a general preliminary results and also an in-depth investigation of 2 cases of 2 letters. Okay, so we made a selection of mediums. Until now, we have 3 Brazilian mediums with a large experience with psychographic letters. Okay, and these mediums, they have non-controlled, consistent reports of anomalous information reception. Okay, and another important aspect, these mediums, they lived far from the place of research. They were brought to the place of research, that was the city of Juiz de Fora, Minas Gerais, Brazil, but they had never been in the city, so they had no contact with people here that were the sitters. Okay. Another important aspect, only 2 researchers were aware of their identity, of the identity of the mediums. All the rest of the research team that had contact with the sitters and all the preparation did not know who the mediums would be, exactly to avoid any information leakage or to any sitter to get to know which medium would come to the research, to avoid any uncontrolled contact between the medium and the sitters. Okay, and we also talked in depth with the mediums, asking them about their usual procedures. So we try to adapt the method to the usual mediums procedures, of course, respecting the control. For example, we allow the mediums to have their spiritual readings, prayer, musics, or even lectures during their psychography. So we try to respect and replicate the natural environment. Okay, the sisters selection. We invited the sitters from meetings designed to support mourners in spirit centers in Juiz de Fora. In addition, we contact people who had lost a loved one recently from our contact network. So the sitters should be adults, should be available to attend psychography sessions, and also should have a loved one died for at most 10 years, but ideally less than 2 years. And of course, no previous contact with the research leaders. Okay. So how was the design? So the sitters arrived at the Spirit Center. Oh, it's important because the sessions, the psychography sessions, happened in the Spirit Center, but we controlled all the environment. We, the researchers, control all the environment. We performed it in Spirit Center exactly to make the medium and the sitters more comfortable with. So the sitters arrived at Spirit Center. They were received by our research team. They filled the questionnaire and they seated all of them together in a large room. And the sitters, they answered the following questionnaires. A reception form. This reception form is the usual one used by the mediums in their regular work. So these are the information that were provided to the mediums. Okay, the names of the sitter and the deceased, the full names, sitter and deceased, the kinship between them, date of birth and date of death of the deceased. Okay, they also informed their socio-demographic, self-rated health. They also filled the revised paranormal belief scale, a scale on spirituality, a scale on prolonged grief disorder. And after they receiving the letter, they scored a global evaluation scale about if they think that this letter is or not from their loved one, and also because they were interviewed immediately after receiving the letter, and also they were re-interviewed 2 or 3 months later, okay, to compare their answers, okay. So these were the controlling procedures. We described how natural it was, but now what were our controlling procedures, our concern to avoid information leakage and frauds. So only 2 researchers knew medium's identity, who would come, okay. Mediums and sitters were blind to each other until the psychography session starts. Mediums, they one each in a different day, okay, they did not came at the same day. In different days, mediums traveled from their cities that were more than 600 kilometers from Juiz de Fora. They traveled to our city by plane, and then we took them in the airport, brought them to the city, and conducted them to the Spirit Center. And they were not aware to which Spirit Center they would work. And the city has 45 different Spirit Centers. So it would be very hard for them to find which Spirit Center would be. And we try to keep the shortest possible the time between the arrival of the medium and the beginning of the session. Usually it was only a few hours, 4 to 6 hours, okay? And the mediums were conducted by a researcher to a private room in the Spirit Center for preparation, to reading the reception forms, and also to have an individual interview with the sitter, okay? Usually this interview lasts less than 1 minute. As soon as the mediums arrived at the Spirit Center, they left their cell phones with the research coordinators until the end of the session. They were permanently accompanied by at least 1 researcher. Okay, since they got the first information when they got the reception forms until they write the letters, they were constantly, at no moment they were out of our sight. So they had no way to get any information at all. Okay, so and they were continually filmed. So they were in the presence of a researcher, and they were also continually filmed. And after they had after they read the reception form and called the sitter for a short interview, and during this interview, of course, we were able to analyze what kind of information was provided, okay? And after that, after finishing all this, they went to a table in this large room where were all the sitters, and then they wrote all the letters in front of everyone, okay? And all the material for psychography, paper, pen, pencil, were provided by the research team. So these are some pictures, actual pictures of the experiment to show you. So for example, these are the reception forms with those informations. Here we have the medium, here we have a sitter, and here we have an interview, okay? So these interviews, as I said, usually last less than 1 minute, very brief interviews. I will provide an example later. So here, after the interviews, here is the room with all the sitters seated, okay? Here is the medium doing the psychography, the camera, and during the psychography, according to the medium's request, we could have calm music being played, or we could have a lecture. Here we have a lecture on some spiritual theme during the psychography procedure. And see here again, another example of the psychography, the medium doing psychography, another medium, and some of the mediums brought an assistant with them, okay? And the assistant was the same point, they were filmed and followed by us all the time, having no cell phones and things like that, okay? Another example of the psychography. And after finishing all letters, the medium start to read out aloud all the letters. So they called the sitter. So the sitter came here, and he was able to read the letter in front of all the other sitters, okay? Another example, another reading, okay? And after finishing all the session and all after reading all the letters, we had a brief interview with the medium, asking how they felt during the experiment, the session, if it was fine, if they had any troubles, or if they felt that they were able to get good connection. And it was very important to say that after the sessions, all the 3 mediums report that they felt very well. They felt in their regular spiritual connection, okay? So it's another evidence of the ecological validity of this protocol. So as I said previously, after the medium read out the letter, the sitters were interviewed at that same moment, just after the reading, and they were asked about their initial impressions regarding the letter's veracity through open-ended questions, and also they fulfilled a global evaluation questionnaire about if they think that this letter is certainly or probably from their deceased relative, or probably or certain are not from their deceased relative. And then we had a second, more in-depth interview about 1 to 2 to 3 months later, and in where we asked the global evaluation scale. We asked the sitter to comment each item of information, of verifiable information of the letter, and also to present documentation or evidence that confirms or disconfirms what is stated in the letters. And finally, we are currently performing a handwriting examination, especially regarding the signature in the letter. We are comparing the signature with the actual signature of the deceased. A top expert from the Brazilian Federal Police is helping us with the handwriting examination. Okay, so here we have the general results. Okay, so the mediums, all the 3 mediums felt comfortable. we had 174 registered believers. However, 142 attended at least one session. The same sitter could attend different sessions, okay? In the end, we had 27 letters to 22 sitters. That means that 5 sitters got 2 letters from 2 different mediums, okay? So here we have the 4 sessions that we had, the 3 mediums. One medium had sessions in 2 different days, the number of sitters, and the number of letters, okay? As you can see here, this medium produced more letters in their sessions, and these other 2 produced 4 letters in their sessions. One sitter declined the participation after that, so all our analysis now will be based on 26 letters and 21 sitters. But for now, I will still present the general profile of the 142 sitters that came. So here we have their age, the mean age, okay? Most of them were female, and it's striking here the very high educational level. Almost 6% of the sample has higher education or post-graduation. That's much higher than in Brazil. In Brazil, is about 15% of the population has higher education. And this is similar, it's even higher to the profile of the spiritists in Brazil. In spiritists in Brazil, about 30% have higher education. So we can see here that people who seek this kind of communication have higher educational level. Also regarding the religious affiliation, we can see here that by large, most were spiritists, much higher than the prevalence of the spiritists in Juiz de Fora, our city. And then we had Catholics, okay, and others. It's remarkable here that we had only one sitter that was Protestant, evangelical, while in Juiz de Fora, 22% were evangelical, because there are some struggles between evangelical and spiritists in Brazil, so it can explain that. Okay, and regarding the marital status here, and we could see here the self-rated health for 1 to 100 was on average 80. That is a quite good self-rated health. We had also a high level paranormal belief in the paranormal belief scale, high level. Also, specifically the question of this questionnaire, if they believe that a disease can communicate from 1 to 7, the average was 6.6. That means a very high level of belief that disease can communicate. Also, the scale on spirituality, this is also on a high, shows a high level of spirituality in the sample of sitter. And also we can see here that 16% of the sample had complicated grief. Okay, so it's basically a highly educated sample, basically composed by spiritists, women with good health, and high levels of spirituality and paranormal beliefs. Okay, and some of them had complicated grief. And here we have the global evaluation scale. Okay, so they scored from 0 to 3. Certainly it is from my deceased, or probably it is, probably is not, certainly is not. So we can see here, just after the session, by large, most thought that they were certain, or at least probably it is from their deceased one. Only one person said that it's not, but 1 to 3 months later, we had a decrease in the certainty, okay, of this, that the communication is from the deceased person. However, most of them thought that it was certain, or probably that they were. And it's also interesting to say that they had no one that said that certainly is not, and this that said that probably is not, all these letters came from the same medium. Okay, now let's move quickly to some examples of letters. For the first is Peter. Peter is the name of the deceased. Okay, it was a session with 35 sitters and got 9 letters. Okay, at the reception form, it was informed that the death was 4 months ago, the age of death was 18 years old, the cause of death was aneurysm, and names of the deceased, the mother, the father, and because of a mistake of the sitter, she also informed the name of the sister of the deceased. So the interview was very short, as you can see here, only 35 seconds. He said, oh, the mother is the medium and the sitter. The mother RC, it was in the reception form. Is you? Yes. Monica is sister. Did he die suddenly? The medium asked, yes. Have you received a previous letter of him? No. And then the medium spontaneously said, the guy of the remarkable teeth. During the interview, the father displays a disgusting face, probably that he's not happy with that. And after the sitter leaves, the medium says, the boy with a remarkable teeth and smile, and the father does not believe. That was only the information. And then the letter had 14 items of information, 11 fully correct. 3 were not fully correct. For example, the 3 examples were when the letter that I not always thought life was good, and the headache seemed like others. The sitter was not sure about this information, and also that they would have many thoughts of cemetery and funeral. That was clearly not correct. Here are some of the correct and more specific information. I wish I could get home again and hide to scare you. This is a very specific thing that the sitter said that was a frequent and recent trick that the son played on her. And even the father was unaware of that. Okay, he used to have this behavior. And also he said, oh, I used to eat and leave the plate on the counter in their house. And actually the house has a counter that's not that common in Brazil. And he had this habit of leaving the plate over there. I dreamed of being 18. He was the car, and when it came, I left. Actually, he died 1 month after he was 18 years old. And according to the mother, he actually had a dream of having a driver license. And actually, he had asked as a gift for his 18th birthday that the parents would pay for him to get the driver license. Okay. And also another example, good memories of playing with the hose water. And this was actually a childhood game that they used to play. And specifically regarding the pleasant smile and the remarkable teeth, these are some actual pictures of the deceased, okay? And even a caricature of him emphasized, a caricature made while he was alive, emphasized his remarkable teeth and smile. And the signature, this is the actual signature, this is the psychography. This is a part of the signature. We are working on this now. And finally, the last case, Jane. Jane, in the reception form, was informed just the dates of birth and death, names of the sitter, and 2 deceased. The father, Paul Jr., and the sister, informed that the sitter was a twin sister of the deceased. And there was no interview, okay? The letter was written with no previous interview. It had 15 items of information, 9 were fully correct, and 6 were not correct, okay? Basically in the middle of the letter. For example, our princess birthday parties in childhood memories. There was no princess birthday parties, for example. When he said, our father Paul, well, the name of the father was inferred from here, okay? However, the deceased never referred to his father as Father Paul, but only as dad. Or, for example, I talked about the mass we heard, but they were not Catholics. But during the funeral, they had a prayer, not a mass. So these are some incorrect information. And these are some of the more precise information. When he said Lisa, the name of the sitter, my face, my image. And actually, they were not only twins, but identical twins. And this information was not available in the form. We're still a pair in the school of life. They always have been very, very close. They studied together. They were even very, very tied to each other during their whole life. And the deceased had a long-lasting neurological disease, 30 years of neurological disease, okay? And she said in the letter, why you and not me, you wondered. And exactly, according to the sitter, she said she used to wonder why we were identical twins with the same DNA and she got the disease and not me. I would prefer that I had the disease. I would cope better with disease than her. We still cope the clothes. It's interesting because even as adults, the deceased used to cope the clothes of her sister. One candle is enough for our birthdays. The twins' birthday celebration, usually on bedside of the deceased because of the neurological disease. They had a candle, a cake with one candle of this celebration. And another very interesting example, the way we are now, even traveling to Europe, got easier. It's interesting. According to the sitter, this was a very important message because the sitter traveled 5 times to Europe in the last years. And she used the scribe in detail to Jane in her bedside, spending hours describing in detail all the countries that she visited and saying that I bring Europe to you. And the last time that she did that was 7 days before that. Okay, and also she the medium drawed this picture. Okay, and immediately after seeing this, the sitter remembered of this picture. Okay, so she thought that this drawing is reflecting this picture. If the laces, they were together, this is what they claim. And also we are working on the signature. Okay, so finally, in conclusion, we will develop further analysis of the other letters. This semi-naturalistic method used could be a good balance between control regarding fraud and information leakage with ecological validity. It was feasible and well accepted. Mediums were comfortable, can be improved. For example, we could include blind assessment, and also is a promising complementary design in mediumistic research. Of course, it's not to replace the other methods, but it's another way to complement. Okay, so I'd like to thank you very much. I will be happy to take questions. Here we have our contact information. Thank you very much.